Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our session of the Summer Lunch and Learn series brought to you by the Graduate College at the University of Calgary. My name is Helen Pethrick, and I am an alumna of the Graduate College. I will be the moderator for this afternoon session. We also have Emma, who's joined us here, who will be on tech support. We are very excited for two of our scholars to have the opportunity to share their presentations with you today. We will start off with some opening remarks, and then I will introduce our presenters. They will each have about 20 minutes to share their presentation with us. At the end, there will be a question and answer period. Please use the Q&A box that you can see on your Zoom application to enter your questions at any time during their presentations. You don't have to wait until the very end to ask. And finally, we will conclude our session with a short summary. I'd like to start by taking this opportunity to the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. The city of Calgary is home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. I would also like to note that although we are connecting virtually today, the University of Calgary is situated on land adjacent to where the Bow River meets the Elbow River, and that the traditional Blackfoot name for this place is Mohkinstsis, which we now call the city of Calgary. So what is the Lunch and Learn series all about? Well, it is a public presentation series that aims to bridge the graduate college with the Calgary community. Our series has been ongoing since April 2020, so over a year, and we are continuing this series into the fall as well. During each Lunch and Learn presentation, graduate scholars present their diverse research for the public. Without further ado, today we will have Tina Abedi as our first presenter. Tina joined the University of Calgary in September 2019 as a graduate student in environmental engineering. Her graduate research involves biological characterization of digested waste residue recovered by mining of landfill bioreactors operated in the anaerobic bioreactor mode for about 15 years. She is studying the residual biomethane potential, BMP, and methanotropic oxidation potential of the fine fraction of the recovered digested waste to find the ultimate use for the excavated material. Thereafter, Doug Doyle-Baker will be our second presenter. Doug is a fourth and final year Doctor of Veterinary Medicine student in the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine. Doug is in the clinical year of his DVM degree, where he rotates through various veterinary clinics and hospitals throughout the province and rest of the country to gain experience of the many facets of the veterinary profession. Currently, Doug is on a clinical rotation in Pincher Creek at a mixed animal practice, where he has had the opportunity to treat and perform surgery on dogs, cats, horses, and cattle. Although unsure of what his next step will be after completing his DVM degree, Doug imagines that he will likely take a few years to practice his clinical skills in a general practice before doing further training in either a residency or PhD program. Before starting his DVM, Doug completed a Bachelor of Health Sciences and a Master's of Science at the University of Calgary. He is very active and loves to run, bike, row, and ski. What a great lineup of presenters that we have today. I'm going to stop my screen sharing and give it away to Tina, who will be starting things off today with her presentation. Go ahead, Tina.
Sure, thank you. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Good. So, hello everyone. Thanks a lot for the introduction. As Helen said, my name is Tina, and I'm a Master of Science student at University of Calgary in Environmental Engineering. I'm working on Calgary Biocell, and I will explain more about the project and what is it about. First, in 2018, we produced 2 billion tons of waste, and it is estimated, just give me a second, And it is estimated that by 2050, we will produce 3.4 billion tons of waste, which is 7% increase in the waste, which means that we should do something to manage our waste. Previously, we have open dumps, and in the mid 20th century, we moved to sanitary landfill. As you can see in the picture, it was a dump of waste, and which is so unhealthy, and then we moved to sanitary landfill. Now it's time to go to the next generation of landfills, which is biocell. I will explain more about biocell later, but first, let's see why it is important. First, landfills are the third largest source of methane production. And methane is 34 times more harmful for the environment compared to carbon dioxide, which means 1 ton of methane will be equal to producing 34 times of carbon dioxide. So it is so rational to do something for the methane. And then on the other hand, methane has been tripled since pre-industrial time. And that's why we are experiencing the 5 warmest period because of the global warming. And last month in the Calgary, we had a really hot weather, which is a sign of global warming. So we should do something for the methane. Now, what is biocell? Biocell is the next generation of landfill. So first, landfill was a place to dump this waste, and now biocell is a modern way of landfilling. It has 4 stages. The first stage is to first make the cell, make it and fill it with the waste. And then when it is filled, we will go to the next stage, which is anaerobic. Anaerobic means there's no oxygen. So it's a good, in this stage, there are some bacteria that degrade the waste and produce methane. There are some collecting gas tubes that collect the methane which is produced, and we use the methane as a fuel. For a 5-year period, it was really good. It has a really good rate of methane production. And after a while, the degradation decreased, and it is not worth still to get methane out of the waste. So the third stage started. In the third stage, we introduce oxygen to the biocell, and oxygen helps this waste to degrade it more. And when the degradation was stabilized, and it was time to mine the cell. Mining the cell is the next stage. I will show you some picture. So this is the stage that we mined the cell. It was for 15 years ago. The second stage was anaerobic. We collected methane, and then we introduced oxygen. After 10 years, we started mining the cell. As you can see here, there are excavated waste, and we took sample from different locations and depths. So what can we do with the excavated waste? First, when we excavate the waste, when we mine the biocell, it's really good because we can, again, feel it's not needed to make the biocell anymore. So we can fill the biocell again and start the second stage, and the cycle will go. But the excavated waste, for the excavated waste, there are some recyclable. When the biocell was constructed, the Calgary did not have the program to separate the waste, and there is so many recyclable materials like glass and metal there. So one part of them will be recycled, but the focus of this research is on the biodegradable fraction. The biodegradable fraction, we can have 2 uses for them. The first use is to use it as a cover on the landfill. As I said, landfill produce methane and carbon dioxide. The excavated waste have the potential to oxidize the methane. When the methane is oxidized, it turns to carbon dioxide. And as I mentioned, carbon dioxide is less harmful, 34 times less harmful for the environment compared to methane. So we can use the excavated waste as a cover on top of landfill to oxidize the gas, which is methane and carbon dioxide, and turn it to carbon dioxide, which is less harmful for the environment. Or there is another use for the excavated waste. We should examine whether still there is a potential of producing methane. At the second stage, as I mentioned, we produce methane out of the waste. We will examine whether still is the potential of producing methane, and then if it is okay, we can use it in the biogas plant and produce methane. And methane is a fuel, we can use it like fossil fuels. So there are two characteristics of the waste, the excavated waste. How we should check the methane oxidation potential and biochemical methane potential. The methane oxidation potential is the ability of the excavated waste to oxidize the methane and use, and if it is good enough, we can use it as a cover, or the ability of BMP, which is the ability of producing methane. And if that was good enough, we can use it in biogas plant. So this is my experiment. Here we, as I said, we took samples from different locations and depths, and for the methane oxidation potential, the way we check that whether it's good enough to oxidizing is put a certain amount of waste in a bottle which is sealed and introduce methane to that and wait. It's so interesting that after 20 years, they have and we will check the composition of the gas there. We introduce like 10% of methane and see how long it will take to degrade and oxidize the methane. And interestingly, there are still bacteria there that oxidize the methane. So we draw the curve for each point and find out based on the characteristic of the waste. I characterize the waste in different locations, like what is the phosphorus, what is the nitrogen percentage, what are the pH and different other characteristic, and based on that, what is the methane oxidation potential. And for the biochemical, for the BMP, we have, again, for different locations and depths, we have the batch series. We will check how much methane is produced by replacing water. We have a reactor here, which is waste, and then they produce methane. And in the red bottle, we have water, full of water. When the methane is produced, it goes to the bottle with the water. It's actually water with salt, and then the water and salt will go to the purple one. This is how we volumetric method of checking how much methane is produced. And then we check what is the composition of the produced gas, and again we draw a curve to see whether it's good enough to use it as a seed in biogas plants or not. So based on the method characteristic and the result from MOP and BMP for each type of waste, I can find out which use is the best, and it will help reducing the methane and using it, the excavated material as something else, the second use. When we excavate the waste, we make space for new waste, and then the excavated waste is used as a second for another use, whether as a cover or a seed in plant, which promote the circulation of material. And then it's a revenue in form of carbon credit. Nowadays, everyone is looking for carbon credit, and by reducing methane, and methane is 34 times more harmful, so it has good carbon credit. We are getting some carbon credit. Thanks for your attention. If you have any question, please put in the Q&A box.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Tina. It was really interesting to hear about some alternate ways to use our landfills and make them more sustainable. So as Tina mentioned, if you have any questions for Tina, go ahead and put them in the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And now I'm going to invite Doug to go ahead and start on his presentation.
I can't get my video on.
Can you try now?
Oh, there we go. Oh, sorry. One sec. Let me pull up my. You guys are seeing that, hopefully. Sorry if there's some background noise. I'm in a vet hospital right now, so it's busy as we go. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming today to see our talks. Because I'm in the DVM program, I'm not actually doing any research at the moment. And when I was asked to do a talk, I thought about it and I submitted my topic idea a few months ago, and that I want to talk about veterinary medicine and how it's not just puppies and kittens. I meet a lot of people that say, oh, you're in vet med, that means you get to play with little cute dogs and cats all the time, which is kind of true, but not completely true. We do deal with all sorts of animals. And with this talk, I also just kind of want to give you more exposure to what the veterinary profession is. A lot of people don't really know what we do. I don't know if we don't advertise well or explain what we do well, but today I'm going to give you a little taste, and I kind of maybe bit off a bit more than I can chew. So I'm going to go through a lot of different aspects of vet med today. But I also want you guys to realize that we deal with every species imaginable. So cows, horses, pigs, rabbits, all the birds, all the reptiles, including primates as well. We deal with, and even though we're not directly, like, a lot of our work really does impact humans as well and human health. And so these are all just a bunch of stock pictures of cute baby animals. But this is kind of the outline of what I'm going to go through today. I'm going to tell you a bit about how I got into veterinary medicine and how I ended up where I am today. I'm in Pincher Creek, by the way, at the Country Vets Animal Hospital doing some mixed animal medicine, which has been a really cool experience so far. I'm going to give you a brief history of veterinary medicine. So I got to do a bit of research of my own for this talk, and learn a bit about where the veterinary profession, my perspective here at the University of Calgary, because it does vary a bit depending on the school, and also it varies depending on the country you're in. And then I'll give you a quick overview of the different roles that a veterinarian can take on in society. So my journey to vet med. When I was a high school student, I was really interested in science, but I was also interested in social studies, and I really wanted to be able to combine those subjects. And I came upon the Health and Society Bachelor of Health Sciences program at the University of Calgary. And this is just a screenshot of their banner on the website there, but becoming a leader in building healthy communities, both locally and globally. And that was a message that really excited me. I kind of saw myself wanting to become a human doctor one day. And I just felt like this was the degree that would take me on that path. And so I actually applied to human medicine many times and got interviews, but never really managed to get past that step. And that definitely bothered me. I didn't really know what I was doing. But in my fourth year of my undergrad degree, I applied to this program through the University of Calgary, where they took undergraduate students to Tanzania, work alongside veterinary medical students, as well as some other health and public health professionals, and go and do a global health project in the Ngorongoro conservation area, which is highlighted in this picture. Now, human doctors, one's a lawyer, and then there's me, almost a veterinary doctor. But the project that I was working on in Tanzania was looking at anti-parasitic drug resistance in sheep and goats that belonged to Maasai pastoralists living in the area. And the Maasai are an indigenous population who live in Tanzania, who still live a very traditional lifestyle, herding their sheep and goats around the countryside. And they really depend on their animals for income, for nutrition, as well as for social status. And when these animals are impacted by parasitic infection, where these are blood-sucking parasites called Haemonchus contortus, and they suck the blood, make the goats really sick and skinny. It really impacts the human health as well. And this was a concept that really excited me, that animal health could have such an impact on human health. And these are just some of the pictures of the Maasai people that we worked with, and they were very keen to learn what we were trying to learn, and we wanted to part of this project was building capacity so that the project carries on without our involvement into the future. And so we did a lot of work in this area in trying to educate and provide the tools necessary for the Maasai to be able to treat their animals themselves, and we all depend on a healthy environment. And if you lose one of the points of this triangle, the triangle collapses, the triad collapses. And this was something that I had not heard about or thought about before going on this trip and doing this research project in learning about the One Health concept. And it was just very exciting to me, and it impacted me in the sense that it completely switched where I wanted to end up. And I started applying to vet med. It took me 2 tries, but eventually I did get there. I also did a master's degree in between, but we're not going to talk about that today. And just to show you some pictures, because it was really cool being in Tanzania, but this is where we camped there for almost 2 months in the conservation area. And in addition to all the work and research we did, we got to see incredible animals. And these are just a bunch of pictures that I have. I could do a whole talk just on. Oh, my audio is lagging a bit. Okay, hopefully that helps, and hopefully you guys are hearing me. I have some messages that you're not. Could someone just give me a message that you are hearing me? Okay, great. Oops. Yeah, so animals, lots of animals, elephants, lions, rhinos, and amazing sunsets and views. So I want to be a veterinarian at this point, and I also want to share with you guys a bit about the history of what is veterinary medicine as a profession and how did we get to where it is today. So this is going to be a very brief overview, a whirlwind tour of veterinary medicine, or the idea of humans' relationship to animals. So you have likely heard of the many different cave paintings over in Europe and around the world, but always depicting humans' relationship with animals as far back as 30,000 years ago. I believe the Chauvet cave in France might be the oldest one, but just these drawings or pictographs and carvings, petroglyphs of our relationship with animals. And there's even in here in Canada, which might be the oldest pictograph in Canada, in Ontario, likely from an Anishinaabe group, just showing the human relationship to animals. And this is also demonstrated by our domestication of animals. So the scientists think that we domesticated dogs first, and there's debate about whether it might have happened twice or more times, like separate domestication events. And we domesticated other animals, livestock, like cattle for agriculture. Cats are a bit more recent. And then I was to our history, and they were domesticated as essentially an animal to help with war. And I think the significance of horses was really emphasized in my sort of cursory research of the history of veterinary medicine, in that we wanted to learn to treat animals because of the horse and how dependent all the different people were. I'm getting more messages. Okay. Oops. How dependent we were on horses for all aspects of our life, whether it was transport, agriculture, and warring. And so there's documentation that humans from around the world tried to treat horses with various different things a very long time ago in Asia, in Europe as well. And I think it's kind of funny because the joke that I've sort of learned throughout my time in veterinary medicine is that the horse is doing everything it can to die. Horses seem to struggle with staying alive, and they get all sorts of ailments very, very easily. So I think it's fitting that we were sort of started our quest to be able to treat animals based off of our need of the horse. Okay, So fast forward even further into the future, and France is dealing with a bunch of outbreaks of rinderpest throughout the 1700s. Rinderpest is an interesting disease in that it's one of the few diseases that we've managed to eradicate as humans. So officially, rinderpest no longer exists on this planet, but it affects cows. And so this guy, Claude Bourgelat, was a French man who noticed all these continuous outbreaks of rinderpest. And how devastating it was for the French economy and the French. He petitioned the French king, and essentially they got the funds necessary to establish the very first veterinary school in Lyon, l'École Vétérinaire de Lyon, and that was in 1762. So the very first vet school was then. Kind of in my research, it looked like there was like formal human medical school programs as far back as like the 1200s, I think. Maybe someone knows better, but so veterinary medicine is a bit more recent than human medicine in that sense. And the word veterinary comes from veterinarian in Latin, which means working animals. So we've established a veterinary school in 1762. This is the classic sort of rod of Asclepius, which is a symbol of human or health and medicine. And then we were very creative in veterinary medicine and just added a V behind it. And fast forward even further, I'm skipping a lot of history, but the first Canadian vet school was established in 1862. The Ontario Veterinary College, originally in Toronto, then later moved to Guelph. And then since then, 4 other vet schools have been established over the past century. And the most recent one is here at the University of Calgary back in 2008. So I am in the 13th veterinary class that will be graduating from this school, and each class has a different nickname, and we are the Koalas, the class of 2022. So that was a very brief whirlwind trip through the history of veterinary medicine. History is cool. I'm really interested in it, and maybe some of you are as well. So how does one become a doctor of veterinary medicine, which I know a lot of people are interested in. So I'm going to give you an overview of what the program looks like, mostly from my perspective. So the DVM, you need to do some pre-DVM work. So kind of like human medicine of undergrad, in order to get those prereqs. I kind of stole this meme and I just added my picture in just to steal the meme. But essentially they say vet school, the hardest part is getting in. And this is me doing a transrectal ultrasound on the horse. And so the hardest part is getting in. I applied a few times, master's degrees now, and there's some older students in my class who are in their late 30s as well. But it ranges from like early 20s all the way to late 30s. And for some reason, the University of Calgary has decided to make it even harder to get into vet school, and they're adding the MCAT to the application process for some reason, which could be a whole other discussion because I think that's kind of silly, but you now need the human medicine entrance exam in order to get into the University of Calgary's vet school. So once you get into vet school, the year is divided up into, or the program's divided up into 4 years. And the first year is all about what is normal. And so you learn your normal anatomy, you learn your normal physiology, and you learn genetics. And I had a very special prof who was my genetics professor, who you may know this man. I don't think I did very well in this class, but he did teach us all about how, look at all these dogs, they're all the same species, but they are all different breeds. And look at that crazy variation that we have in our dogs. Then the next year is what is abnormal. And so you do your parasitology, so ticks. You learn about why cows shouldn't look like very skinny. You do your radiology, your pharmacology, and etc. And then in your third year, you learn how to treat animals. And this was so I just finished third year in April, and it was quite, it was a different year, obviously, because of COVID, and we did a lot of online class, but we still were very fortunate that we got to go in at least once a week to do clinical skills and practice various different aspects of veterinary medicine. So we learned anesthesia. So this is a horse in lateral recumbency, where it's under general anesthesia, which is really interesting. We learned ultrasound. So here I am on the left here, doing some abdominal ultrasound because horses' guts love to twist up and get impacted and do all sorts of crazy things like surgery. So here's just a picture of me doing my very first cat spay. So it was a exciting year, a lot to learn. And then so you move into your 4th year, which is your clinical rotations. And that's what I'm on right now. So I'm in Pincher Creek, and this is my first rotation. So I've been here for just about 6 weeks now, and I've already experienced so many different things, which has been really exciting. And here's just some pictures of me doing various things, seeing turkeys, doing dentistry, mini horses, and even bees. Did you know that vets are licensed to treat bees? Now you do. So it's a really exciting year. And part of this year is writing your NAVLE exam, the North American Veterinary Licensing exam, which is our board exam. And you have to do that at some point. Mine is scheduled for December. So essentially everything that you've learned over the past year, 4 years, you have to, you get tested on that, and you have to pass that exam in order to become a veterinarian in North America, at least. So you're now a DVM, you graduated, but then what? What do you do? And unlike human medicine, after you've been granted your DVM, passed the NAVLE, and registered in your local jurisdiction, your province, you're fully licensed to practice on all species, every aspect of veterinary medicine. So anesthesiology, radiology, every little bit of veterinary medicine, you're licensed to practice. And this is just a picture of all creatures, great and small. And this is from a very famous book, now TV show by James Herriot, but this is just kind of emphasizing that veterinarians are able to treat everything after your 4 years, which sounds kind of crazy. And so the majority of vets go into general practice, which is essentially like, if you could equate it to like family practice in human medicine, but it's divided up into 3 sort of streams. There's small animal practice, where you're working mainly with dogs and cats and other small animals. Then there's mixed animal practice, where you do a bit of everything, including horses, cows. And so that's what I'm in right now. Is I'm the past 6 weeks I've been doing mixed animal practice, seeing all the different animals, including rabbits. And then there you could be a large animal general practice only, where maybe you're only seeing horses and cows, or maybe you're only even just seeing cows and the production animal side of things. So that's what I'd say the majority of vets, they go into one of these 3 streams. There's also the opportunity to specialize in veterinary medicine, which you can do directly that you want to specialize in, and you could stop there and just have an internship, or you could go further and then do another 3 more years of residency. And here's a whole bunch of text. I had kept text mostly out of this presentation, but this is just to emphasize to you that essentially any specialty that exists in human medicine exists in some way in veterinary medicine. So you can become a board certified veterinary oncologist or a neurologist, radiologist. It all exists in veterinary medicine, and it's becoming increasingly specialized, kind of like human medicine. And other jobs that you can take on in vet med, there are many, and many veterinarians go into work in government. So essentially, if you eat meat or consume dairy or anything, a veterinarian has overseen that product in some way at some point during that product's production cycle, whether it's dairy or meat. And so a lot of veterinarians go to work in the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And then other veterinarians will go and work in the Public Health Agency of Canada, Health Canada. Some veterinarians even work for the World Health Organization, but then there's also the World Organization for Animal Health based in Paris. There's a Veterinarians Without Borders. You could work for the Alberta government. I don't know why you want to right now, but you could. This is just a picture of me. I got to go to CDC a few years ago, and that was really cool in the United States. So a lot of veterinarians work there. You might go into the private sector. And so I have Pfizer here because did you know that the president of Pfizer is a veterinarian? So those shots that you may have gotten for COVID were somehow impacted by a veterinarian. And other examples are insurance. Pet insurance is becoming a big thing in veterinary medicine now. So some veterinarians are even branching off and working in insurance industry. And then finally, academia, which is something that really interests me in one day pursuing and going back to that One Health and working in one of these different disciplines in academia that fall under the One Health umbrella and contributing both to animal and human health in some way. And then this picture here is just some of my classmates and one of our profs. And part of academia is reaching out to all in exposing Indigenous children to veterinary medicine, which is becoming a big part of what we do. So that was a very rapid overview of many different topics. I probably could have just stuck with one of those and done a whole 20-minute presentation, but I wanted to share all of this with you today. And the main takeaway I just want to leave with you is that veterinary medicine is quite broad. It's not just puppies and kittens, but we do love them a lot. And this is just a picture of me with my cat, Terry, and my dog, Rosie. So with that, I would just like to say thanks and happy to have take questions at the right time. Hopefully you heard me. I hope the internet wasn't terrible.
Thanks so much, Doug. And we can hear you just fine. I think it's really exciting that we have both panelists joining us from outside of Calgary today, whether Pincher Creek or across the world. So thank you very much, both Tina and Doug, for your presentation today. Doug, you can, stop your screen share there. And it is now going to be our question and answer period. So we do have some questions that have come in from our participants today. So if you do want to contribute something to our Q&A, just type it in that Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So first I can start off with a question for Tina. And Oscar says, great presentation, Tina. How do you check if the methane is usable for the biogas plant? Do you check for fuel efficiency, or if you do, what is the range accepted to be used in a biogas plant?
Thanks for your question. And first, pretty interesting presentation. Like I really, it was so exciting for me. I didn't know veterinarian is that much broad and super knowledgeable. About the question, in the literature, there's a limit that shows that whether it's good for biogas plants or not. For example, 500 milliliter of methane per each gram of waste is a good criteria, and the BMP experiment, which shows how much the methane potential is, should run for 90 days. And I'm in about 60 days and still time to see whether it's good enough or not. But for now, the number is around 200, and I should wait until I get to the end of the experiment and see whether I can meet the criteria for the using in biogas plants or not. And this is a bit time consuming research because it should run for 90 days, and that's why I'm doing that. We will use some machine learning approaches, so for future based, people do not have to run the experiment for 90 days just with the character, because this is about the characteristic of the waste, whether what parameters they have, and after that we can use that, make a model and see if a waste and another waste has that characteristic, whether it reached the criteria or not, without running the experiment for 90 days. So for now, it's about 200.
Thanks, Tina. And now we have a question for Doug from Mohammed. So Mohammed says, thanks for sharing your story and the history of veterinary medicine. What was your favorite animal, and which one did you find the hardest to work with?
My favorite animal, I've never worked with it, but I love polar bears. I think they're really cool. I would love to somehow work with a polar bear one day, although they eat humans apparently. The hardest animals to work with, and also I obviously love dogs and cats, but the hardest animals to work with, I'd say at the moment, are horses, because they are very unpredictable. They can be set off at it, they can be fine, and then all of a sudden they're crazy, and some vets die from horses. It's crazy to hear about these stories that they get kicked by them, and it's intense. So yeah, horses are a little scary.
Thanks so much, Doug. And I also love dogs and cats, and especially the photos you shared of your pets. They're so cute at the end. And another question for Tina here from Mohammed again. He says, thanks, Tina, cool research. Is this approach cost effective, and can it be applied in all environments, for example, cold and hot environments?
Regarding the cost effective, we are using this the material which is already wasted, and we have excavated them. So I will check whether they by themselves have the potential of producing methane or having the potential of oxidizing methane. So there is no cost for them. We are just using it as a revenue. There are some excavated waste there. I'm looking for what can we do with them to make wealth. The expression is making wealth out of waste. And about the whether it is applicable in all environmental condition, the thing is that in Alberta we have cold condition, and that was a question in the second stage, that whether it is good enough, this situation is good enough to produce methane and degrade the gas. And this is a concept that I'm checking, that we are doubting that maybe the waste is not degraded as much as it should because of the cold weather. And now that we have excavated, that's why we are checking whether still they have the potential of producing methane or not, because of the cold weather they might not be degraded and still they have the potential. So for the fourth stage, which is mining, it doesn't matter whether it was in cold environment or hot. We are checking whether they still have the potential, and if they have, what can we do with them?
Thanks so much, Tina. And we have a question for Doug here from Marvin, who's wondering, is it workable to combine a North American vet practice with traveling places like Tanzania, which you did, to assist with research projects there, similar to the parasite project that you were involved in?
Definitely, it is possible. And I think if you work in academia, it's definitely more possible in that you can do research projects, you apply for research funding, and you can go to these different places in the world and do research projects. There's also Veterinarians Without Borders, which is a volunteer organization where they have a website and you can apply to go on different missions, I guess, to different places. And either you're going to go somewhere that's under-resourced and do spays and neuters to control cat and dog populations, or there's even some trips where you would work with wildlife, which would be really cool, whether it's lions or something along those lines. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities to do that sort of work.
And now, Tina, another one for you. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about maybe any current efforts that you're aware of how to build this technology and approach into existing landfill infrastructure. How feasible is that?
There were some research on doing the BMP in European countries. They did that, and but the thing is, the waste is different there, and they started to taking the compost and recycled material there first, and now the composition is different. So for the landfill that we have in Calgary, this research is new, and for feasibility, up to now, the methane oxidation worked and it is feasible. So we are just looking for whether which one is more profitable, whether using the city of Calgary is going to mine all the cell in October. So by then we will decide what we're going to do. This is a ongoing project, what we are going to do with the excavated waste. Is that your question?
Absolutely. And it's so interesting to hear about like collaborations with the city. And as you said, this is a really long-term project. These landfills exist for a long time and decompose for a long time. So I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about like maybe future sustainability of this kind of way of managing landfill waste, like the kind of time frame that might take and what collaborations are involved.
The project was with the city from the beginning, like 15 years ago. University and the city make the cell by themselves with the help of university, and then fill the waste, and the stages goes on, and it takes like 15 years to get to this point that the city has decided to excavate the waste. Now that the waste is empty, we will fill it. The city has decided to excavate it and fill it again. So again, we are assuming a 15 years process to degrade and get the methane out of the waste. And so the good thing about that is we don't have to make another cell, and we're just filling it and using the excavated waste in another project or for another use. In terms of sustainability, we are using the waste that once has been waste at it in the landfill again, and making methane or oxidizing methane, which helps the global warming.
Thank you so much, Tina. Now we do have another question for Doug. Oh, and it looks like Doug just dropped off actually. So that's okay. Sorry, I'm just going to, here you go. Hi, Doug. Are you able to hear me now? Cool. We do have a question for you from Gerard. Do you see a role? Do you see a role for veterinary medicine in preventing things like future animal to human disease transition? I noticed you did mention your interest in One Health specifically at the end. We talked about maybe future directions for your career. How would you focus or specialize in that?
Absolutely. I think we need to, I think veterinary medicine, we need to work a lot more closely in a transdisciplinary way with human medicine and the human healthcare system in order to better tackle these spillover events that seem to be occurring more and more from animals into humans. So this COVID-19 pandemic is a perfect example where it very likely is a disease that spilled over from animals into humans. And we need to essentially have these two disciplines, veterinary medicine, human medicine, and human health, public health, all work together in order to better tackle these problems and be better at doing disease surveillance and establishing early warning systems to kind of preemptively strike against potential pandemic level diseases. And I think the best way, likely the best way to specialize in that area is going and doing more school. So PhD, doing public health research, One Health research, and getting involved in that area. Yeah, I guess there are organizations, not-for-profits, like the Eco Health Alliance is a big one, which I think has funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and you can work in that area too. So there are options.
And a very important follow-up question for you. Ariane is wondering, what kind of dog is your dog? Because it looks a lot like hers.
Oh yeah, my dog Rosie. She is a golden doodle, a black golden doodle. So yeah, definitely looks like a doodle.
Alrighty, so we're kind of getting to the end of the questions from the audience here. I tried to make sure that we answered at least one question from every person who asked one. So if you do have any other questions, any other last burning questions, please make sure to put them in the Q&A. I do have one question that could close us off nicely. I was wondering if both of you, both Tina and Doug, could share one thing that excites you the most about the presentation or research that you just shared.
I can go first. For me, about my research, what I really care about is environment, and the thing that I'm thinking I'm doing something that will help the global warming is just exciting, makes me excited. And I'm thinking that, okay, I'm making the phrase I was saying previously, wealth out of waste. And wealth doesn't especially mean money. The decreasing in the carbon dioxide and methane in the atmosphere is a wealth, and for me, and that is so exciting for me. I'm
definitely excited about finally being able to practice medicine in some way. So it's been a lot. This is my 10th year in university, so I'm a professional student at this point, and to finally be doing something, working in a clinic, and being able to practice all these skills is very exciting for me. So, and I'm just at the beginning of my career, so looking forward to practicing more. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we did have someone in their question, wish you the best of luck on your licensing exam, Doug. So it's been very exciting to talk to both of you today, to hear your presentations and to engage in this question and answer session. I think we talked a lot about planetary health, about sustainability, the intersection between animal and human health, and the important work that both of you are doing to improve the way that we're existing in our world. So thank you very much for your exciting presentations. And thank you as well to all of the attendees who are here today, who asked a question and who listened with all of your attention. I really appreciated everyone's participation. It was a pleasure to have everyone here joining us. This is our final Lunch and Learn for the summer, I believe. And we will be back in the fall in an in-person Lunch and Learn series. So we are excited to share more about that. And please stay tuned. If you'd like to stay connected with the Graduate College, you can do so on social media. We have our social media handle there, and as well on our website to hear more about other events and our Lunch and Learn series. One event I just quickly like to plug is that next week we are welcoming Dr. Elizabeth Vick for our inspirational dialogue series. So that is open to anyone at the University of Calgary community. And it's a highly anticipated speaker and continuation of our inspirational dialogue series. We hope to see you again soon. Thank you for joining us, and bye for now.